Now let me consider four special cases where I'll be discussing a useless good, economic bad, perfect substitutes, and the perfect complementary goods. Now, the first thing that I will be discussing is the useless good. This is a useless good is that type of a good that does not increase any utility or any satisfaction. Say, for example, smoke grinders. Now, if I plot the two commodities where I plot smoke grinders on the y-axis and I plot, say for example, I plot wheat on the x-axis. The only good that is going to give me the additional satisfaction is the wheat, not the smoke grinders. Therefore, the indifference curve in this case, or the utility curve in this case, will be something like this. So the additional satisfaction that is coming is only by the consumption of the wheat rather than by the consumption of the smoke grinders. So I have this utility function 1, utility function 2, and utility function 3. So each and every utilities, all the satisfaction that is coming to me is coming from the wheat side rather than from the by the consumption of the smoke grinders. Now let me consider another case, that is the economic bad. Now in this case the smoke grinders was not adding to the satisfaction, rather however it was not disturbing the satisfaction of the other commodity. Now economic bad is a commodity, or is such type of a consumption that that not only uh, affects the consumption, affects the satisfaction of other commodity, but does not add to the utility. Now, smoke grinders over here were not adding to the utility, however, they were not disturbing or reducing the utility of the consumption of the wheat. Now, economic bad is a situation where the it is not all not only it does not add to the utility of the it does not only it not only it not only disturbs the utility of the other commodity, but it rather does not add to the utility of the other commodity. Say for example, I have the wheat, I have this say for example this fruit jam on the x-axis, and I have these house flies. Now I do not want these house flies, so this is definitely a useless good. However, these house flies are disturbing the utility of the commodity of the jam. As more and more house flies, there is going to be a reduction in the consumption of the jam. So the more of the house flies, there will be the decrease in the satisfaction of the jam. So in this case, this housefly becomes an economic bad that not only disturbs the satisfaction of the other commodity, but also does not add to the utility, total utility in itself. Now let me take about two more cases. The first case is that of the perfect substitutes, and that of the case of perfect complementary goods. Now first I will be taking up perfect substitutes. As I noticed that as I've already talked about, that if the goods are perfect substitutes, MRS will be constant. Therefore the indifference curve will be a straight line. Now let me take Castrol engine oil on x-axis, and let me take Shell engine oil on y-axis. Therefore, indifference curve in this case should be a straight line, which means that a consumer will be just willing to switch one commodity of a castrol for one commodity of shell, because these goods are identically the same. Now, let me talk about the last one, that is the perfect complements. In this case, let me take a car on this side, and let me take petrol on this side. Now, if I increase the consumption of the car, increase the consumption of the petrol without increasing the consumption of the car, it will be useless. So, in this case, the indifference curve will be a 90-degree bent line, which means that if you increase the consumption of the petrol, you have to automatically increase the consumption of the car. Now, if you are increasing the consumption of petrol, you have to increase the consumption of the car. So, in this case, the consumer continuously keeps on increasing the consumption from both the sides. Now, another example may be your left shoe and the right shoe. You cannot consume the left shoe without consuming the right shoe. The pair of the shoe has to go together. So a consumer has to decide about about the quantity of the petrol as well as the car that he has to actually buy in the market, and actually go together with the consumption of both the commodities. Now, let me draw the budget line on each of these factors. Now, say for example, we have a budget line like this. Now, in this case, in a useless good where a consumer is not willing to buy anything of these smoke grinders, and he is willing to buy whole of this wheat, which means that the equilibrium point in this case will be at here, where the consumer is going to spend whole of his income on the wheat rather than spending anything on the smoke grinders. Now, if I draw a equilibrium point, if I draw the budget line over here, which means that in this case again a consumer would not be willing to buy anything of this housefly, rather than he will be willing to buy full of this jam. So the equilibrium point in this case will be here. Now let me draw the budget line in case of the perfect substitutes. Now in case of the perfect substitutes, things change a bit. Say for example, I'll draw a budget line like this. Now suppose the consumer is not convinced by the advertisements of the Castrol, and he is very much convinced by the advertisements of what the Shell are making. So he will be consuming whole of the Shell rather than going for the consumption of Castrol. In such a scenario, the consumption will be fully tilted towards the Shell rather than towards the Castrol. He will be consuming all his income on the Shell rather than on the Castrol, because he is very much convinced with the advertisement that Shell is a better engine oil rather than as compared to the Castrol. Now, in case of a complementary goods, the equilibrium point has to be where the petrol curve and the car curve makes the 90-degree angle. So the equilibrium point is decided the amount of the petrol and the car that has to go together, that is known as an equilibrium point in case of the perfectly complementary goods. Now this is the budget line. So this will be the equilibrium point that shows the minimum amount of the petrol and the car that is needed to go together for the consumption.